We're ready. Hello, everyone. We're going to give people just a minute or so to get settled into the webinar. While we're waiting on the rest of our friends to get settled for the event, if you can hear me and you can see me, I would love to do a quick audio and visual check. So if you can hear and see me, just type something into the chat box. It's a little icon down at the bottom of your screen. You can say hello, you can say how's it going, it's raining outside. Perfect. Thanks. Audience participation already, I love it. Alrighty, well, welcome to today's WorkSmart Live. I'm Dawn Church. I'm the events manager for WorkSmart. And I'm going to tell you a couple of quick tools for the webinar, and then we're going to kick it off. So we do love an interactive webinar, and we find that it's a lot more valuable for our guests if we can speak directly to your needs. So there's a couple of ways that you can actively participate. Number one, you've already tested, which is the chat box. This is a great place to put in requests like, can you speak louder, or can you slow it down? You can say thank you. You can share your personal experiences with this topic. It's a great place to do that. Number two is you can submit some questions. So the best place to submit questions is in the Q&A. The Q&A is a great feature for us as panelists because your questions come to us in a checklist. So there's no way that we can lose them in the chat feed, which does get a little busy as the webinar starts to go on. So feel free to ask questions anytime. We love questions. We will have a dedicated time for Q&A at the end, but you can submit questions at any point whenever you think of them, whether that's something we're talking about right now or not. If it's something we're talking about right now, we'll address it then, and if not, we'll save it for the end. So, and then the last thing is, we are recording this webinar. So you're going to get a link via email tomorrow from me with the recording that you are absolutely welcome to share with other people within your office that you think would benefit from this. So, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Dawn Church. I'm WorkSmart's events manager, and I'd love to introduce you to our co-pilots for today. Those are Marissa Wayman. She is the WorkSmart's marketing manager.
Hello, everyone. Welcome for joining us.
And then also Brent Sprinkle is joining us today on the call. He's the owner of True North Business Navigation.
Hey, good to see everybody, or almost see everybody.
Awesome. So thank you both for joining us, and a special thank you to all of our clients on the call today as well. And then in addition, I want to say thank you to the Durham Chamber of Commerce for working with us to make this available to all of the Durham Chamber members. So welcome to today's WorkSmart Live Personal Connections for Remote Teams, which is part of our remote office series. I wanted to start off by saying, we know this topic sounds a little like it's outside of our wheelhouse, being managed IT service providers. And honestly, as far as the services on the menu that we sell to our clients, it certainly is. But when we thought about doing this remote office series, one thing that was at the forefront of all of our minds was how can we support our clients in a way that helps their teams stay productive and able to collaborate while working in a virtual environment. And while we can provide you all with the perfect system of technology tools and that support productivity and collaboration, absolutely nothing replaces the importance of personally connected people for a team's productivity level. So this is something we believe really strongly here at WorkSmart, so much so that personal connections is one of our 3 core values. So when we're approaching this topic, we realize that while personal connections isn't really a service that we're selling on the menu of our offerings, we actually do really provide this service every day. And I know that's a lot of air quotes that I just did, so let me break this down a little bit more. So I mentioned that WorkSmart has 3 core values, and these values really drive every choice and every interaction that we are doing with our clients and within our teams every day. They are posted all over our offices. We give out awards for them every month. We send each other cheers around them every day. And we are constantly asking ourselves if our actions and recommendations align with our core values. So those values are hunger for growth, do the right thing, and personal connections. So personal connections is literally one of our daily focuses and makes up a huge part of our service and team strategy. So much so that last year we actually won a HR Excellence Award, and we were named one of the best places to work in the Triangle, which was really cool. But you know, with our current environment, we've had to make a lot of shifts in our strategy for team personal connections now that we can't see each other every day. But our values have not changed a bit, so some of our strategy has had to adjust. Luckily, we have a really great foundation for leadership and teamwork within WorkSmart. And a lot of that is because of our work with EOS and our partner, Brent Sprinkle from True North Business Navigation. So we've been working with him for about 7 years, and we're excited to have him help you all today. So with that, you can take it away, Brent.
All right, great. Well, I appreciate you guys asking me to join in and share some knowledge. My goal today, my objective for today is to actually offer some tools that people can use to actually build personal connections. So I want this to be actionable in the sense that you don't just listen and go, oh, that was kind of interesting. I want you to actually have written some stuff down that you're going to take back and do. And actually, to that point, I do plan to provide a handout following the session with a fair bit of this content, so you actually don't have to worry about writing it all down, and you can actually pay attention rather than just taking notes. So there's three or four things I want to try and cover today from an agenda perspective. We've already kind of hit on a bit of the introduction. I want to spend some time talking about actually before you connect, what you need to be doing or thinking about before you connect. Then the meat of it is really when and how to personally connect. And we also wanted to cover some tips and tricks on virtual meetings. I do hope this is, as Don said, an interactive discussion. If you guys have some additional ideas that we're not presenting that you'd like to offer up into the ether for us to share with everybody, I'd certainly appreciate you pushing that in through a chat message. And that's the reason why I was holding out on the handout to go out after the session, was to collect any additional information that comes in from the audience. So, and then as she mentioned, I'll have some time at the end for Q&A, but don't let that stop you from asking questions as we go through the discussion either. So that's my my rough idea of objectives and agenda for today. I did want to give you just a couple minutes background on me, or actually more about EOS. So if you haven't heard of EOS, it stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it's really just a simple approach to how you run your business. It's actually have a picture here on the behind me. 6 components, 2 tools, 2 disciplines that we use to actually run a better organization. And one of those things is actually encapsulated under the right people component, which is core values, which she already nicely spoke to. If I was to summarize EOS simply, I would tell you it does 3 things: VTH, vision, traction, and healthy. So vision from the standpoint of getting a leadership team 100% aligned on where they're going. Traction from the standpoint of the discipline and the accountability to actually go down that path towards your vision. And then healthy from a no politics, greater good kind of an approach, which unfortunately a lot of leaders struggle with. But those 3 components are sort of at the core of EOS. And personal connections, team health is a term we would use in EOS. Personal connections is a big part of that healthy component. So that's where my focus is going to be. I'm not going to try and teach you EOS. I'm going to reference it and use it as a little bit of a framework behind what I'm talking about. But my main goal here is to, as I said, to share some tangible, actionable content that you can walk away with to build stronger, healthier connections, stronger, healthier teams in your organizations. And hopefully you see that as adding value, because it is a differentiator from a lot of different organizations. So let's jump right in. So before you connect, the first thing I want to talk about is before you actually start doing personal connections, what should you consider? Well, I can tell you a conversation I've had with a lot of my leaders and companies recently is it starts with the leaders, right? So whether you're a company leader or departmental leader or maybe even a family leader, but you know, a lot of people, pretty much any role has an aspect of leadership to it, and whether you recognize it or not, your approach, your attitude, your persona, if you will, influences those around you. And if you're in a leadership role, it's actually part of your job. It's part of your responsibility to lead, and that's why you're called a leader. Leaders lead. And in our current situation with COVID-19, unfortunately, in uncertain times, it often drives people to retract, right? To isolate and potentially even feel helpless around what's going on. And even the words of shelter in place sort of push you into a box. Stay in your box and don't come outside your box, right? And as a leader, one of the things you need to be careful of before you connect is what mindset are you bringing to your communication? What persona are you presenting in that communication? That are you a shelter in place? Are we going to be scared and afraid about what's going on? Are we a survive and grow kind of an approach? Or maybe you're somewhere in the middle, but I'd be curious to know how you feel your current organization is approaching this situation.
Let's jump in real quick, Brent,
Yeah.
and say we did just put up a poll in front of you around what you think your company is currently, or how their approach currently is around this. And I will say, if you respond to that poll, it is anonymous, so no judgment. We just would love to hear what's actually happening for you all right now.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like I said, I've been in contact with all my clients about this. I've been using the term as opposed to EOS. I've been asking them about their COS. What's your crisis operating system? And unfortunately, a lot of organizations, when things go crazy like they are, they feel like they got to go change and do things, so much differently. Like, oh, we don't have time for staff meetings anymore. We don't have time for this. We don't have time for that. We just got to go fight the fire. And I would argue that maintaining some cadence, some familiarity, some standard approaches actually help carry you forward to be successful. So your mental approach, back to your mental approach. Dan Sullivan, if anybody knows Dan Sullivan, he's a thought leader with respect to entrepreneurs and leadership. He actually wrote an article several years ago, but he just re-released it, called The Scary Times Success Manual. And it's just a 2-page article. In fact, I'll include that in the handouts, that talks about, what you should be thinking of in this kind of environment, right? So, and 2 points in particular, he says, forget about yourself and focus on others. Forget about your losses and focus on opportunities. So again, I'm asking your mindset around this approach from a leadership perspective. Are you seeing opportunities? Are you looking for opportunities in the current situation? I have a number of clients who while they've not welcomed what has happened, but they do see opportunities in what have happened. They may have changed their business model. Maybe they're, now they're building face masks when they used to build, trinkets, but they're changed their focus. They're looking for ways to make opportunities out of this situation. So I would challenge you as a leader communicating to your people, to your organization, or even to your family to talk about what's the good we can get out of this, what's the opportunities that we should be thinking about and seeking, because that does a couple things. One, it focuses you on the positive, but two, it keeps you from focusing on the negative, right? If you can, it's like, don't watch the news now because it's just going to inundate you with negative stuff, right? So it gives you and your organization a nudge, an encouragement to start thinking about, how are we going to not just survive, but maybe thrive as a result of the situation. So what's your mental state? Before you connect, what mental state are you in? I would encourage you to look for opportunities. I would encourage you to be positive. Your organization, your team, your peers can find plenty of negative input. So be that person who's giving them some positive insight, and be honest, right? I'm not suggesting you should, tell untruths or, try to hide the truth. People need to hear the truth as well, right? Even if it's not ideal. Again, leaders are respected if they tell the truth. So seek the opportunities, be positive, be honest. And then the last thing I'd say about before you connect in your mental state is just a little bit on frequency. So now in particular, more than perhaps any time in recent history, you need to be communicating frequently, right? Particularly if you've got people working remote and you used to see them every day and talk to them every day and 4 or 5 times a day just by passing them in the hall. And now, the only time you see them is on that, specific phone call to talk about a specific item or whatever. But as a leader, if you don't feel like you're over communicating, I would tell you you're not communicating enough, right? So when you start to get a sense of, geez, I feel like I've said this 7 times, it's probably, well, maybe 1 or 2 more and you'll be good, right? So over communicate. People will make up worse things in absence of information, right? So give them the information so that they don't have to create or fabricate what's going on. Tell them what you know, tell them what you don't know, and again, try to find the opportunities that are out there for those willing to seek them. So that's the before you connect. I don't know, do we have results on the poll? Do we have any feedback on what people said? Did anybody respond?
Yeah, we got some pretty good responses actually.
Yeah.
So I believe we had 11 people who responded that their companies are approaching this current situation with a survive and grow mindset. And then 2 said they were kind of somewhere, but nobody said they were scared and afraid. So I feel like that's a good sign.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. That's good. Good anecdotal data too, to know that maybe we're in the looking up and out transition point of where we're at. So that's great. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is, okay, so when and how should we be personally connecting? So as I mentioned, EOS, vision traction, healthy. We actually have healthy built into our model and our process and our tool set in a number of different places and ways. I'm gonna talk about some of those, and I'm probably gonna draw on the whiteboard here, and I'll see if I can make it visible for you guys. In EOS, we have a cadence for meetings, and there's really only 3 meetings that we ask. Let's see if I can get a little closer here, get the camera to focus. There's really only 3 meetings that we expect a company to have on a regular basis for EOS. The first one is an annual meeting, and for those of you that aren't sure about that, that means once a year, right? So once a year session. We develop a plan for the year, 1-year plan, and goals for the quarter as a part of that. But we do 2 team health, personal connection related things specifically in the annual meeting. So one thing we do is called personal histories. Personal histories is a very simple exercise. We don't do this every year. It's really more for a one and done kind of thing, but it is intended to help a team of people build some personal connections, because a lot of times you know people, but you don't really know people. So there are 6 questions that we ask you to answer as a team, right? So you can do this in a departmental meeting, you can do it on a video meet, but 6 specific questions. So number 1, really simple. What's your hometown? Where are you from? Where do you consider your hometown, whether it's where you were born or not? But what's your hometown? Number 2, number of siblings. So what's your family like? I'm one of 7. I'm an only kid. Well, that explains a lot. I was the middle child. You know, there's some connections that you can usually make with people just by learning a little bit about their family dynamic. Number 3, what was your first job, right? So what was your first job? And whether you mean a paying official W-2 job or like a work in the yard job, that's up to you to choose. But what do you consider to be your first job? Number 4, this one's always interesting. What was your worst job, right? So if you're doing this with your current team at work, hopefully nobody says this job that I'm in right now. Speaking from experience, I've seen that happen more than once. So it's usually, though, interesting to hear what people consider to be their worst job. Number 5, what was your greatest challenge growing up? So for those of you that aren't grown up yet, you know, you can go from birth to today, but what was your greatest challenge as a kid coming up in the world? Can learn some interesting stuff there. And then the last thing is one thing about you that no one else in the room knows, or no one else on the video call knows about you. So share something about you that no one else knows. And it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be, you know, that time you went to jail. You know, you can talk about the time you jumped out of an airplane or whatever. It's up to you, right? But one thing about you that no one else in the room knows. And what we're trying to do is get some stuff that you know about yourself, but other people don't know about yourself out into the open, right? So we're just trying to create some connection points around what some things about you, your life, your history that people may or may not know. This is a great exercise to do in a department. It's a great exercise to do if you've got a bunch of new people coming into an organization. It can be really enlightening. It can be really funny, and it can even be a little scary depending on what people share. But it's typically a lot of fun. The second thing we do. Yeah.
Is that a comment? One of our participants, just to showcase how this can kind of bring people together, one of our participants just started responding to these questions to the panelists and the chat feed. Turns out we have the same hometown. So look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're from Detroit. I'm from Detroit. So see, it's just an interesting way to see, like, oh, we know each other, but we don't know each other. So
yeah, it seems so simple, you know, like an icebreaker or whatever, but we've had great success in these 6 questions and weaving teams together based on you were a bag boy at a grocery store as your first job. Man, didn't that suck? I did that too. So. All right, so this is on a scale of 1 to 10 from a riskiness perspective. This is probably a 2 or 3, right? Not very risky. Actually, it depends a little bit on what people share here, but typically it's a pretty low risk exercise. The second exercise is a bit higher on the risk. You need to have a bit more trust with your team for this second exercise to be really effective. But it can be actually transformational in terms of how a team operates. So it's called the one thing exercise, and it's basically 2 questions that you have to answer about everybody else on the call or in the room, right? So 2 questions you have to answer about everybody else. So the first question is, what do you think their single, and I stress single, greatest contribution to the team is? What is the one single thing that is the greatest thing that they bring to the team? Not a laundry list of stuff. This isn't an opportunity to brown nose for a raise. This is just, what's the one thing, the one single thing that they bring to the team? And this isn't like, well, you know, Mary runs payroll, it makes me get my check, that's her single greatest contribution. That's not what we're talking about. This is more about the person. What does the person bring to the team dynamic that you think is their single greatest contribution? The second question is a little bit harder, and that's the one thing you wish they would either start doing or stop doing. One or the other, not both, for the greater good of the team. What's the one thing, like, Marissa, the one freaking thing that I wish you would stop doing is blah, 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 right? And it's with all due love and respect, right? It's coming from a place of how do we get better as an organization? How do we get better as a team? But it's an opportunity to give open, honest, direct feedback to your peers, right? And here's the trick. So when you actually go to share this information, the way we would do this is, all right, so we're going to start by giving Marissa her feedback, right? So we're going to go around the room. I'm going to have everybody answer the single greatest contribution she makes to the team. Her job is to take notes, right? Write this stuff down, because this is the don't stop list. Don't stop doing these things, right? And then we're going to go back around the room again and share with her the one thing we wish she would start or stop doing. And again, her job is to take notes. This is not her opportunity to defer, deflect, deny, explain, justify, right? This isn't like, well, I do that because, you know, don't want to hear any of that, right? This is just you getting feedback from your peers and on things that you could either start or stop doing. After we've done everybody in the room and everybody's gotten their feedback, I'm going to go around the room one more time and say, okay, based on what you heard, and it's your choice, but based on what you heard, I want you to commit to one thing that you're going to work on for the next 12 months, for the next 12 months of the year, right? So I'm going to go around the room, and Marissa's going to say, all right, the one thing that I'm going to start doing in 2020 for the greater good of the team is blah, 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 right?
Wearing matching socks.
For the greater good of the team. So, and we actually will check on that on a quarterly basis to see if she's doing better, worse, or the same. But this is just a way to you know, to get some feedback out there and to actually create a higher performing organization. This is like I say, this can be a little scary, but it can actually be very transformational. Particularly like when the leader of the team gets the same feedback from every single member of the team about what they need to stop doing, they kind of like, oh, I think I get it now. That's something I'm doing that's not helping us. Okay, I get it, right? So.
And from a user perspective, from, you know, participating in this type of thing for WorkSmart on several occasions, it is a little scary because, you know, getting feedback face to face, especially in a group setting, is where we tend to focus. But when you're in the moment and everybody is getting the same amount of feedback from the same individuals, there's a safety there. And then you start to, once you get over that fear initially, there's this great opportunity where you, going back to where Brent, you were talking about honesty, you get in the moment and you provide even more real feedback to your peers. So the more you do it, the more beneficial that exercise becomes. So spoken from someone who finds that type of situation scary, it's also extremely rewarding.
Yeah, it is one of my favorite sessions to facilitate as an outside observer, just because the level of vulnerability that ultimately gets created in the room is just pretty incredible. So I'm going to erase some of this. Don't worry about it if you didn't write it down. It's going to come out in the notes afterwards. But those are 2 things you could do on an annual basis to help build personal connections. The next meeting we have in EOS is a quarterly meeting. Anybody want to take a guess on how often the quarterly meeting? Yeah. Okay, so every 90 days, we get in a room, we evaluate how we did on our rocks or goals from last quarter. We revisit the vision for where the company is going, and we set our rocks for the next quarter. So that's the primary objective of this quarterly meeting. But we do a couple of things in here with respect to building personal connections, building team health. So one of the things we do is a check-in at the very start of the session. And there's 3 questions that we ask everybody to share. But the first question is some good news, or I like to call it your best, right? Since last quarter, what's one thing personal and one thing professional? What's your best personal and best professional thing that's gone on in the last 90 days, right? And the psychology behind this is multi-layered, right? So it starts the meeting out on good news, which is always a good thing, rather than complaining about stuff. It forces you to abstract out of all the details that went on in the last 90 days and pick the 2 kind of top things on your list, personally and professionally. It causes you to share something professionally. And I would tell you, particularly if you're the leader of the team, you kind of need to set the example here with respect to what you're sharing. If you want your team to be open and honest and vulnerable, and your best personal that you share is, you know, I had dinner and a movie with my wife, your team's probably not going to lean into being very vulnerable when they share. But if instead you say, well, you know, my son, he's in college and he was having some challenges balancing school and non-school activities, and he actually got arrested, and we had a long talk about what he was doing and why he was doing that and what he's there for, and you know, what kind of person is he and what kind of person does he want to represent. That's a whole different level of check-in than, you know, I had a nice dinner. So as leaders, again, back to your mindset, you're setting the tone. Your persona will pervade the organization. They look to you for leadership and direction, and if you're having a great day, they're more likely to have a great day. If you're having a crappy day, they're more likely to have a crappy day. So you just got to recognize there's a little bit of a spotlight on you, and you got to take advantage of that and represent that opportunity that you have. So that's one thing we do in a quarterly is the check-in. Another thing we recommend doing, not necessarily every quarter, but at least with some frequency over the course of a year, is some assessments. I can't remember if assessments has 4 S's or not, so don't hold me to my spelling. But so things like DISC, Kobe, Myers-Briggs, Strengths Finders. There's a ton of them out there, right? Anagrams, you know, there's 1,000 different assessments. And what we recommend is actually have the team take the assessment prior to the quarterly meeting. And then in the quarterly meeting, we'll take an hour and actually review the results and talk about, you know, have everybody sort of share, or if I'm facilitating, I present everybody's results and do some analysis. But, you know, recognize that how people operate either cognitively or cognitively influences how they interact with other people. So for instance, Colby rates people on 4 scales. One of them is called Fact Finder, and one of them is called Quick Start. And a high Fact Finder, so you're scored from like a 9 to a 1 here. A high fact finder, when they write an email to get you to make a decision, they're going to give you like a 2-page email with all the analysis that they did and why they think this is the right decision to make, and all the work they, here's the attached spreadsheet that they used. And in contrary, somebody who's a high quick start, they're going to read the first 2 lines of the email and then file it away, right? That's just how they operate. They, if it's not in the first 2 lines of the email, I'm not going to read 2 freaking pages of email to go figure out why if you didn't get your point across in the first 2 lines, you lost your opportunity. So if these 2 people are trying to talk to each other, they need to understand and adjust their behavior in order to better interact. I'll tell you, if you're more than 4 points different here, there's a high likelihood that you're button heads, right? So assessments is a great way to sort of draw out those differences of people and recognize that sometimes as a high fact finder, I need to make sure if I'm going to write the 2-page email, I got to make sure my recommendation is in line number 1, right? So it just helps you sort of blend your communication style to deal with other people. Why are you smiling? What are you thinking about?
Oh, I'm a fact finder. Yep.
Yeah. So this is just another thing you could do on a quarterly basis. Time-wise, yeah. So let me do a quick little aside. There's this concept you may or may not know about called the Yahari Window, which has to do with self-awareness. How aware are you of yourself? And it's these 4 window panes. And it's a little matrix. Move my camera down. It's a little matrix, and it's really trying to define things that are, this is all kind of about you, right? So this is a self-awareness kind of thing. So if it's known by you, about you, and it's known by others, you know it about you, other people know it about you. That's what we would call in the open window, right? I know it and you know it. It's out there in the open. If it's known by you and not known by others, we would call that hidden. You know it about yourself, but other people don't know it. And so we do a personal histories exercise to get some of that hidden stuff into the open window, right? So when you share one thing about you that nobody else in the room knows, that's pulling something about you that others don't know into the open because you've shared it. If it's known by others and not known by you, we would call that your blind spot. Right? Is that blinking light over your head? Everybody else knows about you, but you're clueless. Well, this one thing exercise is what we use to get some blind spots identified. Right? So when people tell you the one thing you need to start or stop doing, a lot of times that's a blind spot. So that helps get some blind spots. And then if they don't know it about you and you don't know it about you, it's just unknown. And actually, the assessments is the way we get some unknown stuff pulled out into the open. So the Yahari Window is kind of the model behind a lot of these activities that we do to get an organization more self-aware. So sorry for the little psychology lesson there, but thought it might help put a little framework around it. So the last regular thing that we do is last meeting that we have on a regular basis in EOS is a weekly meeting, right? So we do a weekly check-in to make sure that your rocks are on track, your scorecards on track, your customers and employees are happy. But we also do some team health stuff in the regular weekly meeting as well. So one of the main things, again, we also do a check-in like we do up here, right? So part of the check-in, one of the 3 questions we ask is share best personal, best professional since last week's meeting. And again, set the tone, be vulnerable, and your team will open up and be more connected and more vulnerable as well. The last sort of concept I want to introduce here is some ad hoc things that we do or suggest that you do. These fall into a couple different categories. So one thing we do, and this is sort of as needed, or at least perhaps on a quarterly basis, we call it a 5 by 5 by 5 meeting. It's really intended to be 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, where you review how people are doing on their, we call it rocks, but it's, you know, it's their goals. How are they doing on their goals? How are they doing in their seat or their role that they're in? And how are they doing on their core values, right? So this is just a way to sort of touch point with people and do course corrections. This is not a sign the document, it goes in your HR file. This is just more from a manager subordinate coaching capability, right? So keeping your circle connected with your direct reports. We also ask questions in here like, as the leader, what else could I be doing to help? What do you need that I could help you get? You know, those kinds of things. And then 2 more meetings that help with solving issues if you have an issue. So if you have a team, I'm going to say that's in a funk, some team funk going on. We have a group of people that seem to be not quite working well together. I encourage you to do, we call it a apologies for the language, what's pissing you off meeting, right? What's pissing you off meeting. And I personally would suggest you do this, well, in today's world, I would personally suggest you do this at the Zoom bar, right? So do a little Zoom meeting with drinks allowed. And you basically go around the room and you ask the question, so what's pissing you off? What's pissing you off, right? Something's not going on well, something's funky in our organization, what's pissing you off? And if I was facilitating that meeting or leading that meeting, I would take their answers and add it to a list of issues. So here's some stuff that's not working as well as it could or should be. And then I would do what we call IDS, which stands for Identify, Discuss, and Solve. And we're going to prioritize these issues. Okay, here's number 1. And we're going to talk about why does that happen, why does that happen, why does that happen, why does that happen, and see if we can come up with something that we can do. What's an action we can take to make that not happen anymore, right? So how do we solve that problem? And it's just trying to put a structured approach behind solving some team funkiness issues. And again, best done at a Zoom bar after 2 beers, so for what it's worth. The other meeting is if you have 2 people who are button heads, right? So 2 people in your organization just can't seem to get along with each other. In that case, we do a personal issues solving session. So again, another term there, pay no attention to the acronym. So you get those 2 people in a room and you basically say, so Dawn, tell me 3 things you think Marissa does well. Oh, that's nice. And tell me 3 things you wish you would work on. Guess what? The 3 things you wish you should work on, I'm going to add on the list. So Marissa, tell me 3 things you think Dawn does well. Oh, that's nice. Tell me 3 things you wish she would work on. All right, guess what? So now we got a list of issues. We're going to IDS and we're going to create some to-dos and try to make some of those issues go away. 95% of the time, that'll solve the personal connection issues that those 2 people are having. 95% of the time, it'll solve the issue. The other 5% of the time, one of them is probably going to leave the organization. But most of the time, it'll solve the issue. So that's a cadence, right? So annually, quarterly, weekly, and then sort of as needed, and a set of reasonably tangible actions you can take to build team health. I would call it team health from Vision Traction Healthy. Build personal connections within your team. So that's a great place for me to pause and see if there's any questions that have shown up that I need to respond to, or take a breath, get a drink of water.
Yeah, grab some water. That was a lot. Yeah, so we don't have any questions in the queue right now, but if you have questions specifically about these exercises or the cadence of these things, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. That's what we're here for. But we definitely still have some more great content to go.
Yeah. We're until 3, right? 3 or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure I'm on my correct schedule. All right, so the other thing, so that was the second item on the agenda, when and how to connect. The last thing we wanted to talk a little bit about, and actually ask for audience input on this as well, is tips and tricks for virtual meetings, right? So in today's world, hopefully most of your interactions are happening virtually, although it's not exclusively that way. Some things I can offer, and then I'll ask the rest of you to kind of toss your thoughts onto the table. When I'm doing Zoom calls today, most of mine are full day, like an 8-hour Zoom call meeting with a leadership team. And one of the things I tell them before we get started is make sure you've got your snacks and drinks there on your table with you, right? We're here for the duration. Bring your snacks and drinks, and be comfortable. I do ask that you wear pants, but bring what you need, have it on your table, so that you don't have to get up and leave the camera and we're all going, what happened to so and so, right? I also ask that when you take a break, to break together. This is just kind of a standard meeting thing, but break together so that we all can step away, and we don't have to, like, if one person runs out, that's for sure when we're going to have a discussion that they should have been part of. So when they come back, then we got to replay, rewind, and go back to what we were talking about. So break together. Leave your cameras on when you take a break, because that way it's really easy to tell when everybody's back from their break. Hand signals can be really productive on a Zoom call. So I'll often ask, who needs more time? And if you've got 12 people on a Zoom call and they all respond verbally, it's really hard to sometimes tell who said what. So who needs more time? Just raise your hand. Or is everybody done? And give a thumbs up. So those visual hand signals can be much more productive and relevant in a video meet. Zoom has this nice breakout room feature, which can come in handy if you want to separate into smaller teams, depending on how many people you have in your meeting. What else did I have? So not just Zoom-wise, but most organizations nowadays are using some form of messaging application, Teams, Slack, WhatsApp, something like that, and creating actually vehicles, channels in those applications for the social, the fun, the personal interactions can be really helpful, right? So, having an actual Slack channel dedicated to, personal greats, or, family fun, or whatever, good news, celebrations, that's a way to sort of maintain some informal connectivity. I'm a big fan of trying to have some fun on the call. Virtually, if you're using Zoom or a camera application, we've taken a break and just had everybody show us your room. Like, give us a little bit of video of your personal surroundings, and that can be a little uncomfortable for some people, but it gives people insight. Like, what do you got on your walls, and how did you decorate, and that kind of stuff. If you're watching any of the the Jimmy Fallon or that kind of late night shows where they're broadcasting out of their house, I think that's one of the interesting parts is you see a side of their lives that you wouldn't normally see, and we're all in that situation now. So share a part of that personal side. Virtual happy hours, big fan of virtual happy hours. I've attended a number of those. You could do lunch over Zoom. There's a lot of electronic game stuff that you can do. I did a family night with my family from 4 different locations. We played online games for like 4 hours in the other evening. If you haven't explored it, Snapchat filters for your Zoom meeting can be kind of fun. If you haven't played with that, that is kind of fun. You can do these virtual things. It's another thing. There's also the, I don't know if anybody's seen this, we talked about it the other day, the invite a goat to your meeting. So there's actually a place you can go and they will put a goat in a field on a camera that you have in your meeting, right? So just to mix it up a little bit. I have a client the other day, and at lunch, they all went and put on costumes and wigs at lunch. So don't be afraid to, be personal and non-professional when the case may call for it. So what do you guys have? What ideas do you guys have?
So we had one question come in about social stuff. So I'm going to share a little bit about what we're doing here at WorkSmart and then segue into that because it kind of fit together. But so as you all probably know at this point, I'm WorkSmart's events manager. So I handle pretty much all of our social gatherings. And all of that was flipped upside down overnight, pretty much. So we've really had to adjust a lot. And that includes a lot of the things that Brent has said, like virtual happy hours is the thing that we've tested and we've done, and we're going to be doing more of. I can speak to the virtual games as well. Jackbox is a really great option, with something that we're going to be implementing here. But one of the things I'm most excited about at WorkSmart is we're developing like a personal connection social plan, almost like I would do for our in-person events for the year. We're now doing something like that for remote events and remote connection opportunities for the next several months. And that includes things like events, but it also includes this like social dedicated channel on our teams for sharing things like pictures of our pets who are so sweet at home right now, and our kids who are running around also at home right now, and good news that we're seeing out in the world. Memes, we're a big fan of GIFs or GIFs, however you want to say it here in the office that works for me. Okay. So all of these things, Marissa's nodding her head. Yeah. And then we're also looking at doing we are going to be doing some team member spotlights where we highlight a different person within the company every week or every other week and do some of this stuff that Brent's talking about with personal histories, where we ask them questions, but we're putting it into a video form that people at the whole company can experience and learn about different people within the office on a regular cadence. So having a calendar, I think, is going to be really important. But one of the questions that came in that's in relationship to that was, how many social meetings should a company or team have a month? I'll say for WorkSmart, we're going to be doing more than what we would normally do. And that's because in a virtual environment, it's a lot harder for larger teams to take part in one particular event, whereas I can have 100 people go play games at Boxcar. I can't really have 100 people come into a Zoom session. I can, but it's a lot harder. So we're doing more things on an ongoing basis so that we will probably have smaller groups participating in those just because there's so many more happening. I'm curious, Brent, though, what you think about that. Do you have an idea of how many social gatherings people should do?
Yeah, so, the short answer is it depends, but I think when we were in the normal world, I would have told you should be doing something focused on building team health or personal connections at least quarterly. In today's world, I would tend to agree with your philosophy. It probably needs to be more than that. right? So maybe it's monthly, like once a month at least, be doing some kind of focused activity that's expected for people to attend, and it's about building, building team health or personal connections or trust. And these are the, this can be a fun activity. It could be an assessment. It could be, let's do the personal histories exercise. Let's, it could be, any number of those activities, but it's going to be a little bit up to the organization. And, you could always, I'm a big fan of, ask the question, right? So ask your team, how often would they like to get together and do something like this, right? So when people get the opportunity to weigh into the debate, then they'll be bought into the decision. So engage them in that debate and then leverage that input to make the decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that I was thinking about as you were talking about that, Brent, is in the office format, we're engaging on a personal level every day. And we're engaging on a personal level, with a lot of different people, a lot of different times. So for me, and working on this social calendar, I'm kind of thinking about how can I replicate what we have in the office. So, and that's looking like, all right, so at the office, we have a physical break room where a lot of us go and spend lunches together. So maybe we have a virtual break room where we can have lunch a couple different times a week. Or, I'd love these like coffee connection type things that we have at the office, and we don't have them a lot right now. So what can I do to encourage those coffee connections online, whether that's in a social channel, or maybe we do like a weekly, right now we're actually doing an every other week happy hour, which is, we're just talking for 30 minutes, and it's not very long, but it is a team event. So yeah, lots of good things.
I was just gonna say, my global team is doing a weekly happy hour, and then I have a smaller team. There's 5 of us, and we try to get together every week as well, socially. So yeah.
Yeah. So there was one other small question that I want to address real quick, and that was, are personal connections exercises included in the packet at the end? I believe so, right, Brent? Okay. And then there was one bigger question that I feel like is a really good thing to end on. And if there are any other questions that want to still be asked, feel free to put them in the Q&A. We are at about time, but we'll try and address what we can. But this last question is, any recommendations for approaching management with these ideas without stepping on toes?
Yeah, just do it. And I know this is risky, right? So I'm a fan of open and honest. It's a very strong, passionate belief. If you're going to do EOS, if you're going to evolve to be a great company versus a good company, you got to be open and honest and be vulnerable, right? So being vulnerable means not only saying, I think you're doing something wrong, but also being able to say, I think I did something wrong, or I don't know what I'm doing, right? So vulnerability works both ways. But just put it in the context of like for the greater good, right? So bringing this up to try and make us a healthier organization and a healthier, more connected organization is, there's science that proves that you're gonna perform better, right? People that get to do what they like to do and that they like the people they do it with are happier and more likely to stay and not as driven by money, and are gonna do things more better. So, I mean, there's a lot of good logical rationale behind it. It's not just like, oh, I wish we had a happy hour. Why can't we have a happy hour? It's like there's a reason behind it. So explain the why behind the request and position it in a greater good. It would be good for all of us kind of perspective would be my advice.
Cool. Okay. I don't see any more questions coming in at this point. So I want to say thank you so much to Brent. That was awesome. Really appreciate your expertise today.
Sure.
And Marissa, thank you so much too for joining and all of your wonderful insight. I have one last thing I want to share before I let you all go. And that is that we have some more events coming up. and hopefully you can see my screen right now. Can you all see this schedule, Marissa, Brent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning, this event is part of our weekly webinar series called the Remote Office Series. So we have a couple events coming up in the next several weeks, and we're going to keep this going for a little while. So keep an eye on your inbox for lots of new event updates. But next week, we have a session on how to Zoom, which will be led by yours truly. So I'm going to be talking about how to set up meetings and webinars and some best practices for those. I'm also going to kind of talk about some of the security issues that people are having and how you can change your settings to protect your meetings and webinars. And then I'll talk about some of my favorite best practices for online events. So join that. If you are interested in learning more about Zoom, then the next week we have a session on we're calling it SMB Phone Home, all about virtual phone systems with our friends from Nextiva. And then I'm really excited, we're doing another panel event. If you were on our last panel a few weeks back, it was